So Michelle and I have disagreed about what should be considered when Bill and Melinda Gates split. I wonder what the law has to say. Michelle?
Yeah, I wonder as well. Philanthropists Bill Gates and his wife Melinda set tongues wagging when they announced that they were splitting after 27 years of marriage. Over the years, the Gates have built many legacies and foundations together, and this may lead to a rather complicated and lengthy separation. Let's unpack it all for you. The legal and financial implications. We're joined now in studio by legal expert Thato Mahapa. Thanks for coming in, Thato. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
On what is a celebrity divorce? I mean, in many respects, what we will be discussing today is, would it be your projections of divorce law in the U.S. and how it would impact an estate of this size, 2 trillion rand?
A divorce is a divorce, irrespective of the country. There's nuances that would apply from the domestic law of each particular country, but generally divorces follow the same process. It depends. If there is an antenuptial contract that was entered into before, in some countries marriages are automatically in community of property, in some countries marriages are automatically out of community of property. In the case of Bill and Melinda, they have an antenuptial contract that they entered into. Remember, at the time they got married, he was already a billionaire. Right. So there would be an antenuptial contract that would, to a large extent, protect his estate and protect Melinda's estate and their interest in that respective estate.
So I read that they are married in community of property. Just explain that to us. Can I be married in a community of property and still have an antenuptial agreement?
No.
Okay.
An antenuptial agreement, by implication, at least in terms of South African law, by implication, an antenuptial agreement says that you're married out of community of property. What we then have to inquire is whether it is with accrual or without accrual. Right. When you're married in community of property, there isn't any agreement that you need to enter into, because that is a system that is governed by the law insofar as South African law is concerned.
Right. So let's do the two scenarios then. According to the information that I have here, it says it couldn't be determined whether the two had signed a prenuptial agreement. According to this article, at least, they are married in community of property. So let's go with both options. Let's start with the community of property option. Does that mean that automatically it's a 50-50 split?
Automatically, it is a 50-50 split. That is correct if you're married in community of property, and irrespective of who contributes. Because remember, contributions in the building of an estate are not only financial. Yeah. So I can stay for 27 years with the kids, I forfeit my career, I forfeit my development and growth as an individual, and you're going out, all you just do is have babies, and then you go back to work, and I raise the kids over the 27 years. The question is now, the sizable estate, you would have not been able to build this sizable estate had it not been for my contribution. Right. So I may not have contributed financially, or may not have gone out to work or conducted deals and so forth, but it was also because of my presence and my contribution that you were able to build this estate. Yeah. So from a community of property perspective, we'd still be entitled to a 50-50 split.
Our contributions were different. Our contributions to our fortune and our life were different.
So when you're married in community of property, there isn't my fortune and your fortune. Right. It is one joint estate, and we have an equal interest therein. Right. And if you're married out of community of property, then it depends on what your specific contract provides. There is options to exclude certain of your assets or certain of your activities from that particular estate. So we'd then look at what does your particular antenuptial contract provide, what does it say about what assets are included and excluded, and how we treat those assets at the time that the marriage dissolves.
This is very interesting because it's the second really high-profile sort of, shall we call it, Hollywood-style divorce taking place in the last few years. 2019, that separation from Jeff Bezos and his wife, the Amazon CEO. So that was quite clean-cut because most of the fortune was concentrated in Amazon stocks. So it was pretty easy to split that fortune. This might be very difficult because even though Bill Gates made a lot of his money from Microsoft, He has actually quite a small stake in Microsoft now. According to this information, around 20% of his assets are in Microsoft. The rest in real estate, energy, in hospitality, and a whole range of other public companies. In terms of whether it is in community of property, it doesn't matter where your money is. It's 50-50. But that anti-nuptial agreement might make it harder?
That's the one big misconception about divorces. The first rule of divorce, if ever there has to be a set of rules, is that every single divorce is capable of resolution by the parties.
Right.
You and I can come to an agreement about how we're going to distribute the assets, and we can have that agreement made in order of court. There's no need for it to be acrimonious, to be a lengthy court battle. The only thing, the only person that benefits out of that is the lawyers, because we get to charge fees.
Right, right.
But for every single divorce, whether it's in community of property, out of community of property, whether you've been married for 6 months or 30 years, you're able to come to an agreement that says, this is how we're going to distribute. And one of the benefits of that is that they're able to say, I have interest in real estate that if I cash out now so we can distribute, I'm going to lose out. So I can keep the investment in the real estate, you can keep the interest in Microsoft, you can keep the shares here, and you can redistribute those assets so that you get to an equitable distribution of the wealth that's been created. If there's a prenup that says the interest in Microsoft is excluded from the calculation of his estate, then it makes no difference how much the stake is, how much it's grown over the years, because it is excluded.
Right, right.
And there's instances where people conclude prenup agreements where they have an entity that is excluded, and they exclusively trade all of the activities within that particular instrument. And at the time of the divorce, because it's excluded, there's nothing really left to share.
Yeah, yeah.
So estate planning is also quite a significant thing to consider before you get into marriage.
Yeah. It's so interesting because we're all, tongues set wagging, but it's because of the amount of money that is involved here. But as you say, a divorce is a divorce.
A divorce is a divorce.
What are you seeing, just as a final comment from you, in terms of what you're seeing now when people are getting married? What kinds of agreements are you seeing? Do people still get married in community of property in South Africa?
Yes, they still do. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have stats about the distribution,
sort of
but
generally.
the people that we're generally seeing, and they're getting younger and younger and younger, coming and saying, I would like to find out what an antenuptial contract means, and what are the different types of antenuptial contracts, and how best do I protect my already existing assets, and how best do I protect myself going forward, because I'm going to be involved in a risky business,
right.
and I don't want it to compromise the entire estate or to compromise what my partner has been able to achieve over the years, or the family home, and they're going for a combination of an antenuptial contract, and they have a trust that they put their personal properties as a legacy for the kids. They put that aside in a trust, and they're taking a real conscious decision about how to structure their affairs so that they can get the greatest financial protection out of it.
Not very romantic, is it? Trying to discuss how we're going to, split our assets in the event that this marriage doesn't work out. But more and more people are finding out it's very necessary.
No, but that's another, popular misconception with prenups, that people think that if we're entering into an antenuptial contract, it means we're planning for a divorce.
Right, right.
It just means you are very cautious in taking care about your financial interests. Let's say, for example, you get married to me and I'm an attorney. I essentially run my own practice, and at any point in time, I can take a stupid decision or be a victim of an unfortunate circumstance, and I can find myself in an overwhelming amount of debt.
Right.
We're married in community of property, it's your debt too.
Right.
But if we have an antenuptial contract, you're protected from that.
And also your relationship is possibly protected from that as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I have couples that they're both in business, they're both entrepreneurs, they both don't have a fixed income, they models of business that they're going into, one is very risky, one is a low-risk model.
Right.
And they said, look, because we know that inherently when we go to business there is a risk, we want to be able to separate our estates and protect each other from any sort of mischief that might befall either one of us in business. So it's not anywhere being unromantic or, planning for a divorce or anything.
Right.
It's just being financially prudent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for coming into studio. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thato Mahapa is a legal expert as we continue to unpack the implications of that 2 trillion rand that's at stake as Bill and Melinda Gates file for divorce. They've decided to separate, they say, after 27 years of marriage.